Thank you, Rav Moshe David, and hello, Rabbanit Chava. It's an honor to have you here. And please feel free to comment when you are interested and when you can. Um, our topic today is going to be a beginning of a few topics in the near future of the Beit Midrash. uh, Relating to interpersonal mitzvot between people, and it's I I want to I'm trying to find the words just before we just start, just to say that I would say like this to it could seem to people that learning about Jewish law is mainly, or the main issue is connecting to God, because we know about interpersonal relationships. We have all of us have family, have friends. We know what bothers us. We know what we know how to fight since we're little children. We know how to come clean again. It's a human behavior, and so sometimes it doesn't sound so halachic. It doesn't sound so much that it's necessarily a part of the Jewish law. I know Shabbat, it's a new thing. It's a strange things. I need to change my life, or I need to start something that is absolutely different. This is Judaism, but to be nice to a different person, that's just human. Um, and in a way, it's true. We are saying that מצוות שבין אדם לחברו קודמות למצוות שבין אדם למקום. Between man and man, the mitzvot between man and man come before the mitzvot between man and God. But that doesn't mean that it's not halacha. It doesn't mean that it's not part of Jewish law. And since it's written in the Torah, exactly like any other mitzvah that we learned about, then it is halacha. It's part of Jewish law, and it has rules, um, and we must learn them. We will notice that the demands uh, the demands are halachic demands, and they have criterias. It's not just a general idea of be nice to each other, or not even the famous pasuk that we will start with right now. Ve'ahavta l'reacha kamocha. You should love your friend as yourself, or love your neighbor as your friend as yourself. It has guidelines, but I would say, on the other hand, that those subjects are subjects that are, while they are halacha, they are also something more, which in the Jewish terms we call midot. In other words, how do we shape our identity? How do we shape our personality? How do we change ourselves to be better people according to what God wants from us, as it was described by the sages and by the rabbis? And so we're touching here on concepts that many times will flow between the usual, I would say, halachic language, which those of you who have been in the classes for some time will recognize. What are the guidelines? What is allowed? What is forbidden? Like you will know from kashrut, or from Shabbat, or from the holidays, and so on and so forth, into how should we act? What should we build in our hearts? What should we build in our minds? how should we conduct ourselves in life? And so it's an interesting adventure that we're going to go through here. Um, and I'm sure we won't manage to finish everything, but we will try and we will at least start. So I'm sharing. Um, yeah, just I'm trying to make it full uh, full screen here. All right. So, like every other mitzvah in the Torah, in Judaism, the source of mitzvot are found in the Torah. Uh, God writes what he expects from us in the Torah. Our job is to understand, to figure out what is it that he wants. This is what the sages did, um, and to apply it to our lives. Um, so this subject, I would say, this huge subject, uh, uh, is expressed in a series of psukim from the book of Vayikra, Leviticus, and the parasha is Kedoshim. It's a parasha that has many mitzvot of different natures. And within this huge gathering of mitzvot, we can see these psukim. Would anybody like to read in English the psukim? Okay, I will read. You shall not render an unfair decision. Do not favor the poor or show uh, difference to the rich. Judge your kin fairly. Do not deal basely with members of your people. Do not profit by the blood of your fellow Israelite. I am God. You shall not hate your kinsfolk in your heart. Reprove your kin, but incur no guilt on their account. You shall not take vengeance or bear a grudge against members of your people. Love your fellow Israelite as yourself. I am Hashem. So it's a series of mitzvot that start with what might seem like orders to a judge, and actually the mitzvot before are mitzvot for the judge. What is the right way to judge a person? But it is making a transition into just general interpersonal relations. Um, you should you yeah it starts with judge your kin fairly, which I would say once we're saying your kin in Hebrew amitecha, we will see that the sages already see that it's not only a judge to someone who is in the courtroom, but it's your friend, your kin, someone who's next to you. You should judge fairly. And we will see that the rabbis ask, what does it mean to judge fairly? Um, not 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 talk about other people, not to profit by the blood of your fellow Israelite, not to hate, to reprove, but incur no guilt, not take vengeance, and not bear a grudge, and the sum of it all, ve'ahavta l'reacha kamocha, love your fellow Israelite as yourself. So it's a group of mitzvot that talk about both feelings and actions towards our friend, and it's uh, it's it's an interesting thing that the Torah mixes it together. Um, one thing is to say that we can talk about others, but then a mitzvah like don't hate your brother in your heart, right? So how it's a feeling. What can I do with my feelings? How can the Torah order on feelings? Um, and the same, I understand that I shouldn't hold vengeance. Uh, uh, sorry, shouldn't take vengeance. Yeah, that's an action. I shouldn't take vengeance. Even someone harmed me, I shouldn't be revengeful. But what does it mean bear a grudge? I'm not allowed to feel now? What is the how do you do it, and how is God expecting us to do that? So here already within the psukim, we see that there's that what we talked about, the mixture between action that we know from other mitzvot and the mitzvot of the heart. We have the ahavta et Adonai Elohecha. You should love you should love Hashem, and also the Gemara immediately asks, can you order of love? And this idea was spoken about here in this Beit Midrash a few times. But here again, there's a law. You should shape your feelings, and in the same time, also shape your actions. We won't get into the learning of the psukim too much because really we have too much to learn. But I did want to bring in, I would say, an interesting view uh, of this whole idea from the Yerushalmi Talmud. Um, I would just say in 2 words that usually when we say the Talmud, we talk about the Babylonian Talmud, which is a set of books that are actually a recording of learning in the Beit Midrash in Babylon, where many of our sages lived after the destruction of the temple. And our sages studied the Torah and studied the Mishnah, which was written in the land of Israel during the times of the temple and before. And they had discussions in the Beit Midrash about each and every word and every concept that is written in the Torah and the Mishnah. And all of our halacha all of our Jewish law comes from these discussions of the Talmud, which later on were further discussed and were gathered into decisions in the halacha books. What is less known is that there is another Talmud, another whole set of the same, referring to the same Torah and the same Mishnah, discussions that took place not in Babylon, but in Israel, and is called the Yerushalmi Talmud. And the Yerushalmi Talmud it is based on the same sources, so many of the discussions are similar, but many of the discussions are also different. And it's written in a slightly different form of Aramaic. So it's also, if you know how to read Yerushalmi Talmud, it could be harder to learn. If you know how to learn Babylonian Talmud, it still doesn't mean that it will be easy for you to learn Yerushalmi Talmud. And but it's of course a very important source. So the Yerushalmi deals with the pasuk that we just read. You should not take revenge or nurse hatred against your fellow countrymen. It's a bit different translation, but it's the same pasuk. And the Talmud asks, how is that? How could I not hate my fellow countrymen, my kin, my fellow Israelites? And then the answer goes like that. He was cutting meat, and the knife fell down on his hand. Should he go and hit his hand? Yeah. If the knife fell down on his hand, is the right way to answer is to hit the hand for not working well with a knife? No, of course not. And this allegory is trying to say the fact that there's a dispute between us doesn't mean that we must disconnect. The opposite is true is true. Our people are like one body, and therefore, when we fight, fighting more, it just hurts the body. When someone does wrong to someone else, the right way to cure is to make peace between the different parts of the body, not to cause different parts of the same body more pain. So this idea, I thought, brings into light a certain theory or a certain thought behind all of these rules. Those are rules that are connected to the fact that we are one body, that we are one. Um, and I would say that in many ways, this idea that we are one family, shapes these laws. It's not only about people who are strangers to each other. Within Jewish thought, the Jewish people as a whole are not strangers. They couldn't be strangers. They're more than, and not only they're not strangers, they are one body. They are really one. Essentially, they are one, and therefore, the laws of interpersonal relationship are not only laws of how to be nice to each other or how to make sure that there's no fighting or how to be kind to those who need our help, or how to just be plainly um ugh, a word slipped my mind. Just to be, nice to each other. It's an essential thing of how do we keep the body together? How do we make sure that we feel as one? We feel as one. And I think for those of us who are converting now, I think this is and maybe not, also for those who are not converting, this is a notion that we must incorporate in ourselves. Once you will convert, you're going to be part of a body. The understanding that when you accept upon yourself the mitzvot and you accept upon yourselves the belonging to the Jewish people, you are entering a body. You're entering an organism that is uh, that is uh, that is all together. And the good part about it is that we can feel really like brothers and sisters. And I think that people who come to any Jewish community or to Israel, they can feel it. That people, even if they're absolutely strangers, they're still there's something there. They could really be mad at each other, but it's still a family that is mad at each other. It's one body with different organs. And it goes also to the other side, which is it's much more of a problem to fight. It's much more of a problem to hate or not to love, because it's, as the Talmud says, it's you're hating yourself. You're fighting with yourself. You're hitting yourself, your own arm. So this was, in a way, an introduction of the set of mitzvot that we're going to talk about. So the first mitzvah that we'll just go very quickly over it, because it is not uh, it is not what we're expected to speak about. I'm not sure if I'm pretty sure that there's another whole class about love your friend, about V'ahavta l'reacha kamocha. But since our subject is don't hate, it's very, very hard to ignore love your friend while speaking about do not hate. Um, so the mitzvah of loving your friend, as we saw, it was the last pasuk in the in the list of psukim that we studied before. And here I'm bringing before you, it's good for you to know about this book if you haven't heard of it. It's called Sefer HaChinuch. And this is a book which is based, it's based on Parashat HaShavua, or on the Torah, and it brings in each parasha all the mitzvot that appear in that parasha. And so someone who wants to go over the mitzvot in a special way, not so much according to subjects, but according to the Torah. So if every week we know there's the Parashat Shavua, what are the mitzvot that are in this parasha? And it's a very friendly book, a very sort of general. It has a very, very good, I would say, measurement of the important things that the halacha says on each mitzvah, but also when it is focused around the Torah, around the source of the parasha. So I encourage you to open Sefer Chinuch once in a while. Just check which parasha we are in and go through Sefer Chinuch um, to see what he says about all the mitzvot in each parasha. So this is mitzvah 248. He also counts all the mitzvot, so he gets to 613, and it shows how the 613 mitzvot are inside the Torah. The commandment of love of Israel, to love with love of the soul each one of Israel, meaning to say that we have compassion for an Israelite and for his money. So it's also about an Israelite and also about his money. Each word that the Sefer HaChinuch says here is based on discussions in the Mishnah and in the Talmud and further on. So it's really every word here, if you will go back to the sources, you will see where he takes it from. But so this is the summary of all the discussions that you will find. So you have to have compassion for an Israelite and for his money, just like a person has compassion for himself and for his own money. As it's stated, you shall love your neighbor as yourself. And they may their memory be blessed. He refers to the sages, said, what is hateful to you, do not do to your fellow. And so this is also the negative of the same mitzvah, right? Not only that you should love your neighbor, your friend as yourself, but also whatever is hateful to you, do not do to your fellow. And soon we will see a story about that. And they said in the Sifra Kedoshim, chapter 412, Rabbi Akiva said, this is a great principle in the Torah, meaning to say that many commandments are dependent upon it. As one that loves his fellow like himself will not steal his money, have adultery with his wife, cheat his money from him, or hurt him from any angle. And so too, there are several other commandments dependent on this. The thing is well known to all who have intellect. So this is a nice way to put it. The love of Israel is the love of the people of Israel is a basic mitzvah, and we will soon see that according to the sages, everything stands on this. Both the interpersonal mitzvot and the mitzvot of loving God, between God and God, between man and God, the mitzvot are based on Ahavat Israel, on loving both in the heart and in action, loving the people of Israel. Everything is upon it. Um, and when you will go from the halacha to Jewish thought, you will see endless sources about it. And I urge you to look around, just search books that you're interested in, lines of Jewish thought that you were exposed to already. You will see how much this runs deep in Judaism. You can't love God without loving your fellow Israelite. It's not possible. Most of the mitzvot are not relevant if you don't love and if you don't make sure that you're actively loving your fellow Israelite. And the Sefer Chinuch continues. Um, what are different parts of Ahavat Israel, but we will move on because the lack of time. Okay, so here is the story, and also here we will go over it very swiftly. But this is the story, just since it's the context is, I think, relevant to many of the people here. I thought it's important to bring it. It's a story from the Talmud. I'm sorry, I forgot to put in the source. It's from the Talmud, from Tractate Shabbat. There was another incident involving one Gentile who came before Shammai and said to Shammai, "Convert me on condition that you teach me the entire Torah while I'm standing on one foot." That would have been nice to some of us here. Shammai pushed him away with the builder's cubit in his hand. I will just say that it's part of a whole series of stories that show the difference between Shammai and Hillel. Shammai and Hillel were two major figures, major rabbis in the early stages of the Jewish of the sages. There were a couple. We learned about them in Pirkei Avot on the Wednesday shiur, and Hillel and Shammai are like Aristo and Plato. It's like the two big rivals of Jewish of both halacha and Jewish thought. And there's a school of thought of Hillel and a school of thought of Shammai. Both were very great rabbis and very important figures, but in their personality, they were very different. And the Talmud has a few stories about the difference between Shammai and Hillel, which obviously are in favor of Hillel. In most cases, halacha is like the Hillel line of thought. And so since the rabbis were in favor of Hillel, they also showed how nice he was, also as a human being. So this is one of the stories. And the convert comes before Shammai, and he wants him to teach him all the Torah standing on one foot. And Shammai gets very mad. I think pretty, it's pretty justified. This person seems like he mocks all of Judaism. How can you even ask to study the whole Torah on one foot? And Shammai pushes him away. The same Gentile came before Hillel. He converted him. So he did convert him and said to him, "That which is hateful to you, do not do to another. That is the entire Torah, and the rest is its interpretation. Go study." So for Hillel, at least, that was enough. If you learn about the Ahavta L'Racha Kamocha, love your fellow Israelite, and the opposite, what is hateful for you, do not do to another, that's enough. You know what you need to know. The rest is interpretation. Now go and study. But according to Hillel, this is what the core of what a Jew needs to know in order to convert. Nowadays we don't go by this, so don't raise your expectations too high. Let's go to the next mitzvah, which is do not hate. And here it's another, I would say it's another mirror of love, right? We saw in the first page here that there's a line of mitzvot. You shouldn't hate your kinsfolk. Reprove your kin. In other words, tell them that they did wrong, but don't decide for them that they've sinned, or don't make them sin. Don't take vengeance and hold a grudge, and love your friend. But it's not enough for the Torah to say only love your friend, right? We could have said, what is the rest doing here? Just write love your friend, and that's it. I understand that if I need to love your friend, I shouldn't hate him. If I need to love my friend, I shouldn't hold vengeance. What is the idea of having all those psukim together? And so we understand, and this is a classic way of studying the Torah, we understand that there's a new thing to be learned, a unique thing to be learned from each directive, which couldn't be learned only from the last pasuk, Ve'ahavta l'reacha kamocha. And so we're going back to Sefer HaChinuch, to the same book that I talked about before. It's in the same parasha, mitzvah 234. For the one before that was 243. After that, I'm sorry, 243, and 238 is don't hate. To not hate brothers. This is the subject of the mitzvah. Do not hate with hatred of the heart any Israelite. As it's stated, you shall not hate your brother in your heart. And the language of Sifra Kedoshim, chapter 4:8 is, I have only said hatred that is in the heart. Okay? And then the same in Arakin, which is a tractate of the Talmud, the verse is speaking about hatred in the heart. But when he shows him hatred and the other shows that he is his enemy, he does not violate this negative commandment. However, he does violate, you should not take vengeance and not bear a grudge. Okay, so this is important. So the mitzvah of not hating, the sages read it very carefully, and they saw that the pasuk says, do not hate your brother in your heart. And so they understand that the guidelines of this specific mitzvah is of hating in the heart. There's another mitzvah, which we will talk about in a second, which is do not hold a grudge, and that means that you're not allowed to do something to show that you hate someone else. But there's a specific mitzvah about hating in the heart. In other words, I'm not allowed to say, he doesn't know that I'm hating him, I'm acting nicely towards him, and therefore I am fine. No, it's good that you're not showing hate. It's very good, and it is a mitzvah, both the negative mitzvah of do not hold a grudge, and the positive mitzvah of ve'ahavta l'reacha kamocha. But still, there is another mitzvah which is for a person to check in his heart. Am I hating him? And if if I am hating someone else, God spoke about that case specifically, even if I didn't do anything, even if I didn't express it in any way. Still, God demanded us not to have this feeling. And he goes on. I stopped in the middle. And he likewise violates a positive commandment, as it is stated, and you shall love your neighbor as yourself. I just for those who joined not so long ago, I will just make sure that we're on the same page. The whole Torah is divided into positive mitzvot and negative mitzvot. Positive mitzvot are mitzvot that are you should do this and that. This is a positive mitzvah. A negative mitzvah is you should not do, you should refrain from action. So positive mitzvot are do something, make an action. Negative mitzvot are refrain from action. And there are there's a meaning to the fact that according to halakha, there's a meaning for a mitzvah if it's a negative mitzvah or a positive mitzvah. Someone who goes over a negative mitzvah, it's worse than someone who is not doing a positive mitzvah, right? If I have an opportunity to I don't know, to give tzedakah, to give charity, it's great. If I and I'm giving, it's great. If I have an opportunity and I didn't give, it's a problem. But I didn't do actively something bad. If I'm now doing something that I'm not allowed, it's of course worse. And there are other distinctions according to halakha, just by the nature of the mitzvah, if it's a positive mitzvah or a negative mitzvah. So that should be in your mind when we're talking about these things. And here, the Sefer HaChinuch really says that when you're actively showing hate, you're also violating a negative mitzvah, which is worse, and you're also violating a positive mitzvah of Ve'ahavta l'recha kamocha. But then he continues, and nonetheless, hatred of the heart is worse than all revealed hatred. And so the Torah especially warns about it. The root of the commandment is well known, as hatred of the heart causes great evils among people, being a constant sword between a man and his brother, and a man and his neighbor. And it is a cause for all the informing that is done among people. And it is a lowly and completely disgusting trait among all people of intellect. So here again, he talks in a very, very in a very serious way, almost radical way, about this idea, and especially about the heart, the feeling of the heart. If I'm doing something negative to someone, that's one thing. But if I'm hating him in the heart, he said, this is the reason for many, many, many problems that we have. And actually, we can see it, right? When we are I would say even like this, that in our world, I think we are very focused on not showing when we don't like someone. But the effect of hating them in the heart, the effect of having this feeling of hatred present in my being, still has a great effect on the world. And the Sefer Chinuch is right. If we could have managed not to hate anybody, there would be no problems in the world whatsoever. The fact that we hate, but we're trying not to act accordingly, many times doesn't help. And so here it's an example of how a mitzvah basically must turn into a midah. into a trait of personality, to build in ourselves a great feeling, a great power of not hating. How do we do it? Again, there's a whole range of books of Jewish thought about how do we make ourselves uh, we stop ourselves from hating. Yes, Florine.
Yes, so I have a question. Where is the line between not liking and disliking and hating? Or does do not hate encompasses all negative feelings towards someone?
Great. So this is exactly the next source. Thank you for your question, because it's a serious question. Um, and I would even I would say even more bluntly, if someone does wrong to us, should I turn the other cheek? Should I shut up? Should I say, yes, you did wrong to me, but still I'm full of love to you? Doesn't God recognize that a person feels anger, feels like like there was wrong done to him? So here we're bringing in the Rambam, which I think deals with this in a beautiful way. Deuteronomy, the big rabbi, um, that collected the halacha, the first one who collected all the all the Jewish law and Jewish thought into an orderly book. And the Rambam says like that: whoever hates a fellow Jew in his heart transgresses a Torah prohibition, as Leviticus states, "Do not hate your brother in your heart." One is not liable for lashes for violating this prohibition because no deed is involved. So here again, he brings in, if you read the Rambam a lot, you will see that he puts a lot of order in these things to understand what is the status of each mitzvah. We won't get into it now, but the category of a prohibition that has no deed carries a certain punishment, which prohibition that has a deed carries a different punishment. The Torah only warns us against hating in our hearts. However, a person who beats a colleague or insults him, although he is not permitted to do so, does not violate the prohibition, you shall not hate. And of course, as we read, he violates other prohibitions. And now the Rambam says, because I think exactly Lauren's question, when a person wrongs another, the latter should not remain silent and despise him, as Samuel states concerning the wicked. And Avshalom did not speak to Amnon, neither good nor bad, for Avshalom hated Amnon. Rather, he is commanded to make the matter known and ask him, why did you do this to me? And why did you wrong me regarding that matter? As Leviticus states, you shall surely admonish your colleague. If afterwards the person who committed the wrong asks his colleague to forgive him, he must do so. A person should not be cruel when forgiving, as implied by Genesis, and Abraham prayed to God, and so on and so forth. So the Rambam basically says the Torah uh, doesn't prohibit us from getting into a conflict. Even more than that, if we don't speak, then we're starting to hate. If we're not making amends with someone else, if we're not trying to solve a conflict, then we're starting to hate. Like the story of Avshalom, which was a terrible story in the end. You should read in Samuel, which the fact that they didn't speak was resulted in hatred and resulted in worse after that. And so if I was wronged, it's not forbidden to be mad. It's not forbidden to start a conflict. It's not forbidden to go and ask. Actually, this is exactly the mitzvah. The mitzvah is to solve the conflict so I won't get into hatred. And this is I think a very, very wise way that the Rambam describes this mitzvah, because we would think that making a conflict, arguing, is part of do not hate. The Rambam says no. This is exactly the cure for do not hate. And you should tell him, why did you do this thing to me? And he uses the pasuk exactly the continuation of the pasuk. So he also creates here some kind of sense, an inner sense between the psukim. I'll go back to the first page. You shall not hate your kinsfolk as yourself, in your heart. Reprove your kin. Yeah, this is what the Rambam says. Do not hate, but talk to him. Tell him that he did wrong to you. By that, you're not hating. Yes, Gisa Sarah.
I think one of the most beautiful things I have learned from my parents, and I think would go very well with that, it's when somebody does something wrong towards you, you just said it, like, go and tell him or tell her you did it wrong, and also try to understand, like, why did I also do something wrong to that person? So instead treating people like disposable cups, that okay, you did something wrong to me, I don't want to talk to you anymore, I don't want to be close to you anymore, I will be far from you. No, that's not the right way. Actually, you should go to the person or to the people who did something to you and ask them why, because this is one of the most beautiful and most effective way to what is the right word, I forgot now, to not let any kind of bad feelings and even in the future hate to arise. So you just, like, by understanding and also by really being, even if you didn't do much wrong, but if you say, okay, if you feel so, I also apologize for that, but can we make amends? Can we be okay? I think this is one of the most beautiful things, and I think Ramban actually means also that.
Thank you. Yes, and not only that it's not the way, but it's actually, this is exactly the way to act in a wrong way. Yes. Okay. We're continuing here with the Rambam. We won't read all of this, but a part of do not hate is do not take revenge and do not hold a grudge. And the Rambam here explains the difference between not revenging and not taking a grudge. Revenge is, so we'll just read the example and then we will move on. You will see in the 5th line from the top, what is meant by taking revenge? A person's colleague asks him, lend me your hatchet. He responds, I refuse to lend it to you. On the following day, the person who refused needs to borrow a hatchet from his colleague. He asks him, lend me your hatchet. The latter responds, just as you did not lend to me, I will not lend to you. This is considered taking revenge. Okay? This is one side of do not hate, do not take revenge. The other side is do not hold a grudge. What is do not hold a grudge? What is you see the second line in the second paragraph. What is meant by bearing a grudge? Reuven asks Shimon, rent me this house to me, or lend this ox to me. And Shimon was not willing to do so. A few days later, Shimon came to borrow or rent something from him. Reuven told him, here it is, I'm lending it to you. I am not like you, nor I am paying you back for what you did. Yes, so showing, yeah, you see, you did this to me, but I am better than you. This is holding a grudge. And both of those things are not allowed. Okay. Another what is considered by Jewish thought, and you will see it also in the Halacha book as a part, a branch of do not hate your brother, is judge in favor. And we won't have a lot of time to get into this subject, but it's a very, very important subject and a basic subject in Jewish thought. And again, it's a subject that touches between halacha and midot, and working on our personality. And it is based actually on a pasuk that we already read, a part of these psukim that we read in the beginning. And it's exactly the pasuk that we said is sort of touching. It's either aimed for a judge or for just any person. Do not favor the poor or show deference to the rich. Judge your kin fairly. And we already asked in the beginning, what does it mean, judge your kin fairly? It sounds like it's not entirely a directive to a judge, because it talks about your kin, it talks about your friend, not only about the people who come before you as a judge. And therefore, what does it mean to judge fairly? Yeah, nowadays we have this expression, I'm not judging you, or I am judging you, right? To have sort of, to build sort of a concept about a person. And in a way, this is exactly what we're talking about here. How should we judge someone? How should we interpret someone that we just we are with, someone, a friend of ours or a kin of ours? And actually, the Talmud, Tractate of Shavuot, exactly bears this question, because I didn't bring it here before you because I didn't want to use too much too long sources in a too long source sheet already. But the Talmud in Shavuot asks, what does it mean, in righteous shall you judge your colleague? Exactly the pasuk that we read just now. And there are a few opinions. Most of those opinions are opinions referring to a judge. Most of the rabbis understand it as a part of the laws that a judge must be judged righteous, in a righteous way. And I think the word righteous implies that it has something to do with a judge who is obligated to judge in a righteous way. But the last opinion explains alternatively that you should judge another favorably and seek to find justification to his actions, even if when interpreted differently, his actions could be judged unfavorably. And this is, I won't go into it because we're out of time, but I urge you to read also about this. Search. If you don't have anything more than Google, then search this this word of this expression of judging another favorably, and see how many ideas and how many lessons were written about this idea, that I need, when I'm in any kind of relationship with a person, to interpret his actions for the favor, because I have an option. Most of the times I have an option when it's with my children or with my wife or with my friend or with my parents or with my boss or with my workers. Many times The conflicts arise when I judge someone favorably. And sometimes I'm just judging them wrong because they don't want to hurt me. They did something that seemed hurtful to me, but it wasn't meant like that. And so judging favorably is just a basic idea of avoid conflict when it's not needed. You could stay friends only if you interpret it the action in the right way. But our sources talk about more than that, about trying to find favor also in actions that seem clearly like clearly hurtful. In other words, even if I'm sure that this person that did me wrong meant the worst, and maybe I have many reasons to believe that, still I should find ways to interpret it in a in a favorable way. And you should go into it. The last source that I brought here, if you can just write it down for you to look at it later. This is a Hasidic source, Rabbi Nachman of Breslov, who one of his most basic uh, teaches is about that, about how a person must, for his own sake, to judge another person favorably. We have one last subject, which is not to gossip, and we're out of time, so I won't speak with you about it. I just want to say that do not gossip is an interesting mitzvah, since it seems like a very something on the side, something that is not so important. Doesn't seem like it really dramatically harms anyone, and it's something that we do all the time. This is actually something, unless unless I'm talking here to very, very righteous people, this is something that we do all the time. And we if you go into it, you will see that there are different kinds of gossiping. There's one kind of talking bad about someone else. Sorry, talking bad about someone else isn't even gossiping. It's a different prohibition. But there's something about uh, sorry, I'll say it again. It's not a prohibition about lying about someone else, which is a different law that we have, not to lie about someone else. It's about talking truth, but talking truth which is harmful towards someone else is problematic, and even talking good things about someone else is also problematic. And those things are things that we do all the time, but there are numerous sources in Judaism about how serious and how harmful and how wrong this is. And there's a whole book called Chafetz Chaim, Shmirat Lashon. Look both titles, Chafetz Chaim and Shmirat Lashon, which is a book about keeping our tongue and about the rules of talking about others. And there are many Jews who read chapters or a part of that book every day to remind themselves the laws of what are you allowed to speak about others and what you're not allowed. And the Torah and the sages write numerous places about what is the value, what is the even the um, what good a person gets when they keep their tongue and when they speak when they care about what they speak, and what is the punishment, how wrong it is not to do it. And so here we sort of summarize. So here also, I urge you to look it up and to learn and maybe to get Shmirat Lashon and Chafetz Chaim. But we have sort of summed up this this little chapter of mitzvot, of interpersonal mitzvot that are connected to not to concrete actions like charity or like treating business fairly, but the general idea of how a person should conduct his life with other people around him, other people of Israel around him. And I hope this lesson would be an opening for you for really looking into yourselves, into your souls, into your actions, and make this class, either if you're in conversion or not, also a journey of midot, of transitioning our personality and not only our actions as Jews who keep halacha. Have a good week. I'm sorry that I kept you 6 minutes more. If anybody has questions, feel free to ask any question now.
I have a question. I've read the Chofetz Chaim book, and I'm reading every day. I have this set. So, and he always like here talks about like between Jews. Always the what you speak is between the Jews, and what you speak about another Jew. But is there like somewhere like? Is it the same rules always applying to non-Jews, or is there somewhere to read about those kind of relations?
I would say that that the mitzvot here are clearly between Jews. And we explained already in the beginning that it has to do also with the nature of what the Jewish people are. But of course, those are also just laws that describe the right way to interact. And therefore, it's of course it's really important to keep in peace with other people, also non-Jews. And the way to do it is through the laws of the Torah. But it's important to understand that the laws of the Torah are directed to interpersonal relationships between Jews, and we have other orders for relationship between Jews and non-Jews. That doesn't mean that it doesn't apply, but it means that the directive of the Torah is very specific.
Where could I read about those orders between Jews and non-Jews? What would be the sources, except like, of course, from Torah something?
They're pretty dotted around. I don't know if there's a specific book that I can think of, but I'll look it up, and if I find, I will write.
Thank you so much.
Rav Natan,
Yes.
if I may add, first of all, I put a link to Shmirat Lashon Chafetz Chaim, which is Sfaria is all the time expanding, and they've now included it as well. So I've put a link there, and where you can find the book that Rav Natan referred to. And secondly, regarding this important question, and going back to what you said at the beginning of the shiur, there's a difference between one's own body and the other, right? And in that sense, our relationship is much more severe and strict in terms of creating one organ of us as Am Yisrael, as you said at the beginning. The relation to others, to non-Jews, is much more connected to basic neighborly relations, which is called Darkei Shalom, which is called how to live in peace with others. And in that sense, I would say it's much less particular and much more broad in terms of how do I live properly in a civil society. And we have laws regarding that. One of them is that the laws of the place where you live are applicable according to halakha, that one must follow the civil laws of society. The second point is that the Noahide laws actually include that as well, that living in a civil society is part of, and having a just world is something general that everyone is obligated to. And thirdly, I think also you'll find it many times in terms of actions that one can or cannot take in the name of peace in terms of relations with others. And Maimonides has discussions about that in terms of war and other things as well. I just wanted to add on, I'm not just adding on a bit to what you said, and therefore it's more like you just said, it's spread out because it's actually not, it has to do with different laws and different circumstances, whereas everything you put very well, this shiur has to do with something very concrete in how do I live as a Jew, as a Jewish organ among the Jewish people.
If anyone has any other question, this is the time. No, so Shavua Tov, and all the best. Thank you very much.
Shavua Tov.
Shavua Tov. Toda
Shavua
Rav.
Tov.
Yeah,
Shavua
thank you.
Tov.
Shavua Tov.
We welcome Rabbanit Chana next week for her special shiur, and make sure not to miss it. Thank you, Rav Natan. Thank you very much. Yashar koach
Shavua
gadol.
Tov. Toda Rabba.